I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get blindsided like this. I mean, I always thought I knew my wife, Lisa. We'd been together for about 7 years, married for 4. Sure, we had our fights, mostly about money, her attitude sometimes, and her constant insistence that she was too busy to have sex more than once a month. But I'd always trusted her. I thought she was loyal, that she loved me enough to stay faithful. We had a pretty good life, or at least I thought we did. I work as an architect, she's a graphic designer, and we live in this nice apartment downtown. Everything seemed fine, normal routines, weekend getaways, a few arguments, but nothing out of the ordinary. At least, that's what I believed until I started noticing small things that didn't add up. It started with her phone. Just little things. She'd be more secretive about her texts, hiding her screen when I'd walk by. Her phone would buzz in the middle of the night, and she'd quickly grab it and put it face down. I saw her blush a few times when a message popped up, and I caught her quickly deleting texts when I came into the room. She told me it was just work, some client stuff or friends she was chatting with. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but something about the way she acted, the nervous glances, the quick hands, made me uneasy. Then came the trips she took with her friends, which suddenly became more frequent and longer. I didn't think much of it at first, thinking maybe she just needed a break or some girl's time. But then I noticed her phone bill had a lot of unknown numbers, calls she made at odd hours, and messages that seemed more flirtatious than friendly. I was starting to feel like I was losing my wife to someone else, but I didn't have proof. Just gut feelings and a growing sense of unease. One night, I came home earlier than usual, around 7 instead of 9. I figured I'd surprise her, maybe cook dinner, but the apartment was dead silent. Her car was gone and her purse was on the kitchen table. I checked her phone. She'd left it charging on the couch. Normally, I wouldn't do that, but something pushed me to pick it up. Every instinct told me to see if I could find answers. That's when I saw the message. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize, and it said, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Missed you all day." I felt my stomach tighten. My heart pounded because I knew deep down this wasn't just a friendly chat. I looked through her recent calls, her messages, and it was clear she had been talking to someone she claimed she barely knew. But the tone, the frequency, the way she responded, it was more than just casual. My mind spun. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. All those signs, the odd behavior, the secretiveness, what I had suspected but refused to admit, was now staring me in the face. My wife had been cheating on me, and the worst part, it wasn't just some random fling. I had a sinking feeling that this was someone close to me, someone I trusted, someone who had a reason to be in our lives. I needed to know more, and I knew I couldn't just let it slide. That night I stayed awake, staring at her phone, trying to piece everything together. Feeling betrayed, angry, and utterly lost. That's when I started digging, and in doing so, I found something even darker, more shocking than I expected. The truth about her affair wasn't just about the betrayal. It was tied to something I had never even considered. But I'll get into that next. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been run over by a truck. My mind was racing, replaying that message over and over. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just uncovered something much bigger than I initially thought. I had to dig deeper, get to the bottom of this. I knew I couldn't confront her without solid proof, so I decided to check her emails, her social media accounts, anything that might give me more clarity. I waited until she left for work, and then I quietly snuck into her phone and laptop. Honestly, I felt like a criminal doing it, but at that point I was desperate. I needed answers, and I couldn't trust her anymore. As I sifted through her emails, I stumbled upon a series of exchanges with someone named Alex. The tone was intimate, flirtatious, and unmistakably sexual. They discussed meeting up, secret plans, and even shared explicit pictures. What struck me even harder was that there were several emails from months ago, predating her recent trips and efforts to hide her phone. It wasn't a fleeting thing. I was looking at months of secret communication. My stomach clenched. My wife, my partner of 7 years, had been cheating on me for a long time, and the guy she was cheating with, Alex, was someone I knew. I recognized the email address. It belonged to our mutual friend, Mark. Mark, my best friend, the guy I confided in about everything. We known each other since college. I never suspected him of anything. And now I find out that my wife, Lisa, had been secretly texting and sexting my best friend behind my back. I felt sick. The betrayal felt like a punch to the face, and I was flooded with a mix of anger, hurt, and disbelief. How could she do this with someone I trusted? I needed to confront her, but I also knew I needed to be careful. I didn't want her to deny everything or spin some bullshit story. I wanted facts, and I wanted her to see that I knew. I sat there, staring at her phone and her emails, trying to process what this meant for us. How long had she been doing this? How deep did it go? And then a thought hit me. What if there was more? What if this affair was just the tip of the iceberg? I remembered her mentioning she'd met someone recently at a charity event, someone she claimed was just a business acquaintance. But her stories never quite added up. The timing of her trips, her secret phone calls, her nervous glances, all pointed to something she was hiding. I also remembered how she'd been more distant physically and emotionally, more irritable, snapping at me over trivial things. It all clicked into place. Once I had all this, my mind made a decision. I couldn't just walk away from this, not after everything. I decided I'd gather more evidence, confront her with everything I had, and see her reaction. I wanted to catch her in her lies, completely unprepared. The betrayal was one thing, but the fact that she'd cheated with someone so close to me, it was a whole different level of hurt. As I sat there, holding her phone, I realized that this wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about trust, respect, and the foundation of our relationship crumbling before my eyes. I had to choose what to do next. I knew I couldn't just sweep this under the rug and pretend everything was fine. If I was going to confront her, I needed to do it the right way. No emotion, no shouting, just facts. But part of me wanted to scream, to cry, to beg her to tell me it was all a mistake. Instead, I kept my cool, waiting for her to come home that evening, knowing that everything was about to change forever. When Lisa finally walked through the door that evening, I was already sitting in the living room, her phone in my hand and a cold, heavy feeling in my chest. She looked surprised, like she sensed something wasn't quite right, but she masked it with her usual bitchy attitude. "Hey," she said, dropping her purse on the floor. "What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." I didn't waste any time. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "We need to talk, and I mean honestly, because I've found out what you've been doing." Her face froze for a second, then she rolled her eyes like I was bothering her. "What are you talking about now? You're overreacting as usual. You always jump to conclusions." I held up her phone, the one I had secretly taken from her purse while she was at work. "This," I said coldly. "I saw your messages with Alex. I know about the affair, Lisa. How long has this been going on? Are you serious? You cheated on me with my best friend, with Mark." Her eyes narrowed, a cruel smile curling on her lips. "Oh, come on," she snapped. "You're being dramatic. It's not what you think. We were just talking. He's been there for me, you know, with your stupid obsession with work and how you never listened to me. It's not like I slept with him yet." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She actually had the nerve to deny everything, to lie straight to my face. That bitch. I felt my fists clench, but I kept my voice steady. "Don't lie anymore. I've read your emails, Lisa. I know you've been having sex with him. And I know you've been lying about meeting him at charity events. You've been hiding this for months." She scoffed, crossing her arms. "You're crazy. You're just jealous. Mark is a good guy, and he's been there for me because you're never around. Maybe if you paid more attention, I wouldn't have needed to find comfort elsewhere." The words hit me like a slap. She's twisting this into some kind of pity story, making it about how I failed her. But I knew the truth. She'd been cheating on me, and she didn't care. I told her I had the evidence, her emails, her phone logs, the messages, and that I wasn't going to pretend I didn't see it. Her face went pale for a second, then she snapped back. "You think you're so perfect. You're just a boring, predictable guy. Maybe this is what I needed, a little excitement. You're not the man I married anymore." Her words stung worse than anything else. I felt a rush of anger and sadness. All those years of trust, love, and shared plans wasted. I asked her how she could do this, how she could betray me with Mark, someone I trusted, someone I considered. "My friend," her response. "He's better in bed than you ever were. You're stiff, boring, and always busy with your stupid projects. I needed someone who could actually satisfy me." That one hurt, but I also felt a strange numbness, like I was already starting to accept that this was the end of us. I asked her if she even cared about what she was doing, if she thought about the damage she was causing. She just shrugged and said, "Honestly, I don't care. You're too blind to see it, but I deserve better. And Mark, well, he makes me feel alive." I sat there, listening to her bitter, bitchy words, feeling my world crumble around me. It was like I was watching everything I believed in fall apart. All the promises, the love, the loyalty, it meant nothing to her anymore. She was just a selfish woman who wanted her cake and to eat it too. I realized I had to make a decision, whether to fight, to forgive, or to cut her out for good. The thing is, I knew I couldn't just walk away without giving her a chance to explain herself fully. But I also knew I wouldn't forget what she'd done, not easily. I told her I needed time to think, that I was done with her lies. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk as if she was already planning her next move. I wondered how long she'd been playing me, how many nights she'd spent with Mark. And I knew, deep down, I'd never be able to trust her again. The damage was done. The betrayal cut too deep. I just didn't know what the future held after this. That night was the worst sleep I've ever had. My mind was racing, replaying everything I'd uncovered, her emails, the texts, the way she lied so easily. I kept asking myself how someone I loved so much could do this to me, how she could betray me with my best friend, the guy I'd trusted with my life. The thought of her in bed with Mark, of them sneaking around behind my back, made my stomach churn with a mix of rage and heartbreak. I kept going over every detail, trying to understand what I missed, how I failed. I wondered if I should confront Mark, if I should call him out, or just cut them both out of my life completely. But I already knew what I wanted to do: revenge. Not some childish, destructive revenge, but something calculated, something that would make her realize she couldn't get away with this without consequences. By morning, I had a plan. I knew I needed hard evidence, not just my gut feelings. I spent the next few hours tracking her online activity, emails, social media, even setting up a little hidden camera in the living room to catch her if she brought Mark over again. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be played anymore. I wanted her to realize that I knew everything. It was around noon when I got a message from an anonymous number. It was a photo, clear as day, of Lisa and Mark at a hotel, kissing in a dimly lit corridor. I felt like my chest was about to explode. I stared at the photo for what felt like forever. My wife, the woman I thought I knew, was cheating on me with my best friend, and now I had proof. It was real, undeniable. I was furious, but I kept my cool. I printed out the photo, collected all the evidence I'd found, and made copies. I didn't want her to deny it anymore. I knew I had to confront her again, face to face, with everything laid out. I also decided I'd call Mark later, just to hear his lies, to see if he'd have the nerve to deny it in person. That evening, I waited for her to come home, and I prepared myself for the inevitable showdown. I sat in the living room, the evidence spread out on the table in front of me. I looked at her when she walked in. Her bitchy smirk returned, like she thought she was untouchable. But I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not anymore. "Lisa," I said calmly but firmly, "we need to talk. I know everything. The emails, the texts, the photos. I know about Mark, and I want to hear you explain yourself." Her face flickered with surprise, then annoyance. "Oh, so now you're going to accuse me of cheating? You're really losing it, aren't you?" I shook my head. "I'm not accusing. I have proof, and I want the truth. Why? Why did you do this? How long has it been going on?" Her eyes narrowed and she spat. "Maybe I was just bored. You're so obsessed with work you don't pay attention to me. I needed someone who actually cares, who can satisfy me. Mark was just a means to an end. Don't think you're special." I clenched my fists. "You don't get to justify this. How could you screw both me and my best friend? Were you even thinking about the damage you're doing, or were you just too damn selfish?" She scoffed, crossing her arms again. "Honestly, I don't care what you think. I'm done pretending. This relationship has been dead to me for a while. I'm just finally doing what I should have done years ago, living my life for myself." That's when I saw the true bitch in her, that cold, selfish, manipulative side she always kept hidden behind her bitchy attitude. I told her I was done trusting her. I told her I was going to leave and that I wanted her out of my life. She laughed bitterly, saying I'd lose her if I pushed her away. that she was done being the wife she never wanted to be anyway. My blood boiled. I realized this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about who she really was underneath that bitchy exterior. She was a manipulator, someone who played games and used people. I felt a strange calm come over me, a kind of clarity. I knew I couldn't stay with her anymore. I needed to move on and rebuild my life, even if it hurt. I wasn't going to beg or plead. I told her to get her stuff and leave. I told her that I was done with her lies, her betrayal, her manipulations. And as she packed her bags, I watched her go, feeling like I'd lost everything but also finally gained some sense of freedom. That night, I sat alone in the silence, staring at the empty space where she used to be. I thought about how easy it was for her to betray everything we had built, how she'd lied for so long. But I also knew I'd survive. I had to. The betrayal ran deep, but I was determined to rebuild my life, without her, without Mark, without the lies. I realized that sometimes, the only way to move forward is to let go of what's holding you back, even if it means losing everything for a little while. The days that followed were a blur of emptiness and reflection. I couldn't sleep much, and when I did, my dreams were filled with images of Lisa and Mark, their faces twisted in betrayal. I kept asking myself how I'd missed the signs, how I'd been so blind to what was happening right under my nose. Every time I thought I was past the shock, something else would hit me. Another memory, a detail I'd overlooked. I knew I had to get my head straight. I started focusing on myself, on healing and moving forward. I threw myself into work, poured my energy into redesigning a few client projects, but inside I was a mess. Every time I saw a couple walk by holding hands, I felt a sting. Every time I heard a story about a happy marriage, I felt bitter. I kept replaying the betrayal, trying to find some sense of closure. One night, I decided to confront Mark directly. I didn't want to do it out of anger, but I needed to hear his side, what he thought about what he did, whether he felt guilty, whether it was just about sex or something deeper. I found his number and called him late. His voice was defensive, but I didn't let him spin some BS. I told him I knew about everything, how they'd been cheating for months, how I had proof. I asked him if he really thought that was okay, sleeping with your best friend's wife, lying to my face. He hesitated, then tried to justify it. It's not that simple, man. Lisa's different. She's special. We just clicked, you know. It's not like I planned for it to go this far. His words sounded hollow. I told him I didn't want to hear any of his bullshit, that he had no right to betray me, no matter how special Lisa made him feel. I told him I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach every single day since I found out, and that the pain was only getting worse. After the call, I realized something. I wasn't going to forgive either of them easily. I needed to distance myself to rebuild my sense of self. I canceled the lease on the apartment, moved into a small place nearby, and started therapy. I had to learn how to process this betrayal, how to forgive myself for trusting them, and how to finally let go of the pain. But even as I tried to move on, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been used, manipulated, and discarded like trash. The worst part was realizing that the woman I loved, the woman I had promised to cherish and protect, had thrown it all away for a quick thrill with Mark. I couldn't help but dwell on the fact that she'd used me as a backup plan, while secretly planning her affair. The idea that she had been lying to me for so long made me furious. Still, I knew I had to find some closure. I started writing everything down, my feelings, what I'd discovered, what I'd learned about Lisa. Somewhere deep inside, I hoped that by confronting the truth head-on, I could finally start to heal. I reminded myself that this wasn't the end of my story. It was just a horrible chapter I needed to close. And I promised myself that I would come out of this stronger, that I would rebuild my life on my own terms, even if it took years. I also realized something crucial. I had to be careful about who I trusted next time. Because betrayal isn't always obvious, and sometimes the people closest to you are the ones capable of the worst. I'd been naive, but no more. From now on, I'd be more cautious about who I let into my life, and I'd never let anyone manipulate me again. The scars would heal, but the lessons would stay with me. That's what hurt the most, knowing I'd lost time, trust, and happiness because of her selfishness. But I wasn't going to let this define me. Not forever. Looking back now, I realize that betrayal changes you in ways you never expect. I went from feeling like I was on top of the world, married to a woman I loved, to feeling like I'd been punched in the gut repeatedly for months. The worst part wasn't just the betrayal itself. It was the way she lied so effortlessly, the way she turned everything into some kind of twisted justification for her actions. I'd trusted her with everything, and she'd thrown it all away for a quick thrill with Mark, my supposed best friend. That hurt more than I can put into words. In the end, I learned a lot about myself. I learned that trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. I learned that some people are just selfish, selfish enough to destroy what's good for their own pleasure without regard for the damage they cause. I also learned that revenge isn't always about getting back at someone physically or emotionally. Sometimes, it's about reclaiming your dignity, your peace of mind, and your sense of self. I didn't call her to beg or plead. I simply told her to leave and never come back. I cut all ties, blocked her on social media, and moved on. It wasn't easy, and I won't lie. There were days I felt like giving up. But I kept reminding myself that I deserved better than someone who would betray me so callously. I refused to let her win by letting her destroy me. In time, I started rebuilding my life. I focused on my work, reconnected with friends, and even got back into old hobbies I'd neglected, like hiking and painting. Slowly, the pain faded into a distant memory, replaced by a new sense of independence. I realized that I was stronger than I thought, capable of surviving even the deepest betrayal. I learned to trust again, but more cautiously, always remembering that sometimes appearances can be deceiving. Looking at everything now, I feel a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that I finally saw the truth and took control of my life, and sadness for what I'd lost. But I also feel gratitude for the lessons, for the strength I found within myself, and for the clarity that came from facing the harsh reality. I understand now that life isn't always fair, and the people you love aren't always who they pretend to be. But despite all that, I still believe in the possibility of new beginnings. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts, but also be willing to face uncomfortable truths. And when you do get betrayed, don't carry that pain forever. Use it to grow, to learn, and to become stronger. Because in the end, the only person who truly defines your happiness is you. And I know now that I am capable of moving past the darkness, because I had to, and I did. And so will you.